What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 9 NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. And as always, if you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at alldaypigskin and sign up for our free newsletter at alldaypigskin.com. If you do so, then you will get early access to all of these picks, so take advantage of that. All that information in the description. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdowns, I want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who are taking DFS to a whole nother level. And I specifically want to highlight their matchup shop function, which is an absolute blast. In fact, we've been using it since the start of the NFL season because, let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B can get a little bit stale, a little bit boring. Well, that's not even close to being the case with the matchup shop of Overlay Fantasy, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups, and it's super simple. Just pick whichever player you think will have the higher fantasy performance. And just like a regular bet would work, check out the spreads, do your research, and then win some money. You can bet on pretty much any single sport that you want, whether it's NFL, golf, MLB, etc. All those options are there. And again, super simple. Pretty much for any single NFL game coming up, you've got a bunch of different matchups that are always updated and added to. So if it's something as simple as just putting a single submission, you can do that. But guess what? If you want to get a parlay going and double up some of those winnings, you can do that as well. So take advantage of this. All of that homework you're doing for your fantasy lineups, let's have that translate to some big time winnings for your wallet as well. So do yourself a favor and check out Overlay Fantasy's matchup shop now. Our first game of the week featured the Green Bay Packers at the San Francisco 49ers on Thursday Night Football. And the Packers entered that game at 5-2, coming off a stunning loss versus the Minnesota Vikings, whereas the 49ers 4-4. And also tough loss to the Seattle Seahawks, but man, it wasn't only a loss in the stat sheets, it was also a loss in terms of key players. Kittle, Jimmy Garoppolo, and with a lot of COVID issues heading into this game offensively, Bourne, Ayuk, Trent Williams, we pretty much called this game early, and that's exactly how it played out, because you know that if you follow us on Twitter at alldaypigskin, or if you simply sign up for a free newsletter at alldaypigskin.com, you get access to these picks at an earlier point in the week. So go ahead, take advantage of that. But basically, we broke it down. The 49ers were way too injury riddled at this point offensively. Are you kidding me? Mullins versus Aaron Rodgers. The defense is also hurt. And whether we got Aaron Jones or not, we knew Rodgers and Devontae Adams would do their thing. That's exactly what happened. This one wasn't even close. We told you to lock down the Packers, not only outright and on the spread, which was only plus 2.5 at one point for the 49ers, and that went exactly our way. So we started off the week great. We kick off our Sunday slate with the Denver Broncos at the Atlanta Falcons. The Broncos 3-4, coming off an astonishing come-from-behind victory where you would have thought they were playing the Falcons. But no, obviously that game is this week. And Atlanta 2-6, coming off a victory of their own where they took out the Carolina Panthers. But hey, in the process, Calvin Ridley getting nicked up, and that could potentially be a huge blow to this offense. Currently, his status is questionable, so a bit up in the air. And yes, we get it. On paper, this Falcons offense is still the better unit, but there's so many offsetting factors here that could potentially narrow the gap between these two teams that you start to see why the availability of Calvin Ridley is so key. And speaking of those factors, let's start with the Falcons defense, because pretty much since the start of the season, this has been an issue for them, giving up points left and right. And I would say last week was an anomaly just because of the weather conditions. Now going back to Atlanta, where weather shouldn't be a factor, you would think that there's going to be that potential for a higher scoring affair yet again. And for the Broncos, quietly, they're getting healthier. In terms of Drew Lock, he's now a couple weeks removed from returning from his injury. You've got Lindsey and Melvin Gordon available. Jerry Jeudy continues to do his thing, and Tim Patrick did miss week 8, but now he is on schedule to return. And all those guys can do some serious damage versus this Falcons defense. And on the flip side, well, this Denver defense, it's an underrated unit. And we do believe it will cause more issues for the Falcons compared to what we saw last week versus the Panthers. So at the end of the day, this contest should be a very close one. We expect a decent amount of points to be scored here. And right now, the way we're treating this contest is with a little bit of caution, but we're still giving the slight edge to the Falcons offensively because we expect tentatively Calvin Ridley to be available. If he is not, like we said, this could be the biggest storyline here, then we would pivot more so towards the Denver Broncos, but outright at this point in time, at home, we still give the slight edge to Matt Ryan over Drew Lock. But on the spread, we actually really like the Denver Broncos. Right now, that's spread at -3.5 for Atlanta. This is going to be a close game. That's been the MO for pretty much every single Atlanta game so far. We know their tendency to give up leads. And for that reason, we think the Broncos, if they do lose this game, probably won't be more than by 3 points. So take them on the spread. Next up, we've got the Seattle Seahawks at the Buffalo Bills. Seattle 6-1, and after their first loss of the season in Week 7, they responded well last week, getting a comfortable win over the 49ers. While the Bills 6-2, also victorious, but we have to assume they feel a little bit lucky to get that victory over the Patriots, because if it wasn't for them getting bailed out by a Cam Newton fumble with only a couple of minutes left to go, then that game could have gone a very different direction. And honestly, for the Bills, it's been a tale of two quarters. The first 4 games, everything was going great. Josh Allen, an MVP candidate. The offense was scoring 30-plus points, what seemed like every single week. But these last 4 weeks, it's been a little bit more stagnant, a little bit more consistent, a lot closer games. And, Josh Allen has fallen out of MVP consideration, whereas Russell Wilson, his counterpart in this game for Seattle, he is the lead dog there. Now, for what it's worth, we do think we will see that classic high-scoring game from the Bills here because they have a great matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks secondary, which has been getting exposed since the start of the season. But if they do get Jamal Adams back here, that could be a nice little advantage for them. But to be fair, the Bills also do have some issues defensively, specifically in the rush defense. So Seattle should be all right there. No Chris Carson. We think that they've got some other pieces to fill in, whether it's rushing abilities from Russell Wilson or even DJ Dallas, someone like that, Travis Homer. They'll be able to get it done. But make no mistake about it, this will come down to the arm of Russell Wilson versus the arm of Josh Allen. And when it's so close, we have to look at the quarterback that we feel is more consistent and more reliable because, yes, Josh Allen has a bunch of highlight reel type of plays, but at the end of the day, he still has some head-scratching moments, whereas Russell Wilson has been the definition of consistency. They've both got great weapons, so plain and simple, we give this slight edge to Russell Wilson. We think when it comes to the end of this game, we've got a little bit more faith in him to not make that big mistake. So give us Seattle outright. The spread right now, Buffalo at +2.5. That's relatively low, so for that reason, we will take Seattle there as well. Moving on, we've got the Chicago Bears at the Tennessee Titans. The Bears 5-3, tough overtime loss to the New Orleans Saints, but it's pretty much the same old story every single week, and that is despite a great defense, they have too unreliable of an offense for them to be true contenders. Now, to be fair, the Titans 5-2, probably coming off an even worse loss to the Cincinnati Bengals where they were upset, the offense inconsistent, the defense just couldn't stop Joe Burrow and those weapons, but there should be an opportunity for a bounce-back game here for the Tennessee Titans because their defense doesn't have to be all that great versus a lackluster Chicago Bears offense. And we've said it before, whether it's Trubisky, whether it's Foles, it doesn't really change this offense all that much. The offensive line still has issues. The play calling still has issues. Playmakers outside of Allen Robinson is still an issue. David Montgomery not being able to get it going in the rushing attack is still an issue. Basically, there are plenty of offensive issues. And sure, the defense for the Bears will definitely keep them in this game. We absolutely believe that to be the case. But after, 3.5 quarters, this defense can only be asked to do so much. And that's what's kind of been happening for the entirety of the season so far, because even though the Bears defense plays a great, majority of the game, their offense will only play about a good quarter, if at that. So you don't know what you're going to get from them offensively. The Titans, with a rushing attack with Derrick Henry, they'll be able to chip away at this defense. All Ryan Tannehill has to do is not make big mistakes, and the Titans should be able to get a grind out victory here. Again, it won't be pretty. No game with the Chicago Bears will be pretty. All of them will be tough. That's the MO when you have that great of a defense, but at the end of the day, they get the short end of the stick because outright, we like the Tennessee Titans. Offensively, from top to bottom, they are the better team. Yes, their defense isn't as good, but it won't have to be here versus Foles. Give us the Titans outright. On the spread, however, we think it's a little bit too high, -5.5. And like we said, due to that great Bears defense, we will take Chicago on the spread. Continuing on, we've got the Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. Divisional clash here. The Lions 3-4, and they got absolutely waxed last week versus the Colts, where their defense got exposed yet again. On the flip side, the Vikings 2-5, coming off one of the biggest upsets of the week, maybe of the year, as they took out the Green Bay Packers behind a dominant performance from Dalvin Cook. And honestly, that should be the exact same game plan here, because as bad as the Detroit Lions struggled last week, guess what? It could be even worse in week 9, because there will be no Kenny Golladay in this matchup. They lost him last week halfway through that game. And now Matthew Stafford probably won't be available due to COVID IR placement. So offensively, what will we see from the Detroit Lions? Yes, the Minnesota Vikings defense can be had, but if you're down your best wide receiver, your quarterback, who we saw what this offense looks like without him last season, there's not all that much to expect from the Detroit Lions here. They're going to have to rely on the rushing attack to keep them balanced offensively, but if they fall behind, which they absolutely can, considering that defense is also a weak point, then it's going to be a tall task for them to come back from this game. What we're getting at is we really like the Minnesota Vikings here, the way that the injury situation is trending for the Detroit Lions. Again, the game plan should be a simple one. Don't ask Kirk Cousins to do all that much. Just draw it up the exact same way you did versus the Green Bay Packers. Let Dalvin Cook do his thing and keep the offense afloat and balanced, and that should be the recipe to an easy Minnesota Vikings win. I like them outright in this matchup. The spread at -3.5. So with no Golladay, with no Stafford, I'm also hammering the Vikings on the spread. Next up, we've got the Baltimore Ravens at the Indianapolis Colts. The Ravens 5-2, tough loss versus the Steelers last week. But man, we've been saying it for a while now, and that's basically that Lamar Jackson, unless he plays at an MVP level every week, this is a flawed offense compared to last year. On the flip side, the Colts also 5-2, probably coming off their best offensive performance of the year in a victory over Detroit. But again, don't get too excited here. It was versus the Lions after all. And this should be a tougher contest considering they've got the Baltimore Ravens in this game. But there's something that could potentially level the playing field here, as the big news for Baltimore is that they've got a lot of key defensive players on that COVID IR designated list. And all of a sudden, the betting stance, especially on the spread, has gotten much closer to a pick'em here. We got the Colts at +2.5 initially, and we were still going with the Baltimore Ravens outright and on the spread. And let's treat it as if here, because again, we can't tell what's going to happen with this COVID IR situation on the defensive side of the football, that the Ravens will miss some pieces. So if that's the case, then this is a game that will probably be lower scoring. And yes, we realize the Baltimore Ravens won't be at full strength defensively, but they've still got a great head coach that will get them ready. They've still got some good depth, and they've got a positive matchup here versus a quarterback that's turnover prone, and that kind of folds when pressure is thrown at him. Now, the Colts will also be without T.Y. Hilton. Do you believe the reports that Jonathan Taylor is a little bit nicked up? That could potentially stall the offense in a game where they're going to need all those big names to step up in a big way. Yes, in favor for them, this Colts defense has had that bend but don't break mentality, so it'll probably keep them in the matchup for a while. But let's not pretend it's on the same level as that of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And ultimately, that's what I believe will be the difference here, because the Ravens should have an easier time here offensively. And if it's a close game like we think it will be, we think that the rushing ability of Lamar Jackson, even though there's been a lot of inconsistencies offensively outside Lamar and probably Mark Andrews, and calling Lamar consistent this year could probably even be a stretch, he'll still be able to overcome that with some rushing X factor situations built in. So what we're trying to say is, in this game that should be very close and tight, and again, probably lower scoring, we're going to go with the quarterback that will create more game-winning opportunities for his team. We believe that to be Lamar Jackson. So give us the Ravens outright. And depending on what the spread is at this point in time, when you're looking at this breakdown, the Ravens could even be underdogs, as crazy as that sounds. So we absolutely love Baltimore on the spread. Moving on, we have got the Carolina Panthers at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Panthers 3-5, losing to the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday night in that pretty much rain game from start to finish. Teddy Bridgewater did get knocked out for a little bit, but honestly, the offense, just a lot of confusing game calls with some questionable fourth down decisions. On the flip side, the Kansas City Chiefs, 7-1, they continue to do their thing and show us why they are one of the best teams in the NFL. They absolutely destroyed the New York Jets behind a great day from Patrick Mahomes. And we see that the Chiefs can get it done any which way. Now, for what it's worth, I think this will be a closer game, and I don't think that the Chiefs will have as easy of a time handling the Panthers as they did the Jets, because flawed as the Panthers defense is, they're still a better unit than the Jets. The Panthers offense, also the big news here, probably getting Christian McCaffrey back now. He might be a little bit less than 100%, so I am trying to keep that in mind and, temper some expectations there. But either way, that'll be a nice little boost to this offense because of what he can do as a pass catcher as well. And you've still got pieces like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. But at the end of the day, we're looking at the Kansas City offense. We're looking at the Kansas City defense. The defense is an underrated unit, and we don't think it's going to just allow a bunch of big plays here to Teddy Bridgewater and to those wide receivers, where DJ Moore, a lot of the success he's had has been just on big blown plays. I don't see that happening from the Chiefs, and that's going to take away some offensive success from the Panthers. And then offensively, I just don't see the Panthers keeping up with the Chiefs. I expect a lot of commitment to the rushing attack for Kansas City. They obviously know the Panthers struggle in that department, but we saw last week, even if that doesn't get it going, the Chiefs can just go ahead and say, unleash Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to beat every single defense. And the Panthers in the secondary, they really struggle against speed, and that's something that the Chiefs have plenty of with Tyreek Hill, with Mecole Hardman, and I think this could get ugly kind of fast here. I don't think it's going to be as big of a blowout as we saw versus the New York Jets last week for the Chiefs, but the spread right now, minus 10.5, might seem like a big number, but I'm leaning that way for the Kansas City Chiefs as well. Obviously, I love them outright on the spread. I don't see the Panthers getting garbage time points. I think that, again, the speed of the wide receivers will cause issue for them. And then obviously Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell, both great pass-catching running backs as well, will create some mismatches. So I will take the Kansas City Chiefs on the spread and outright. Continuing on, we've got the New York Giants at Washington. This is a game that we saw only a couple of weeks ago where the Giants were victorious due to a failed two-point conversion right as time expired from Washington. So now we get to see it all over again. The Giants 1-7, tough loss versus the Bucks. Valiant effort from them, but ultimately the better team won. Then for Washington, 2-5 coming off the bye week. They get a chance to get revenge on the Giants, like we said. And for what it's worth, we think that Kyle Allen has gotten a chance to get his feet under him. He's got the weapons. He's kind of built that chemistry with Terry McLaurin, with Logan Thomas, and Antonio Gibson has continued to get more and more involved. So Washington all of a sudden discovering some weapons offensively, but we still have to give the edge overall to the New York Giants side of things offensively with guys like Shepard, Ingram, Golden Tate, Darius Slayton, So advantage to them there. It's pretty close, but what's the ultimate deciding factor here is the defensive side of the football, where in our eyes, Washington has the big advantage. We think that similar to the first game, this will be low scoring, probably, at most 20, 22 points scored from one of these teams, and then the other team probably 18, 19 type of situation. Don't think it's going to be decided by more than a field goal in terms of the final score. So if that's the case, you have to go with the better defense. For us, that's Washington. We think they will create more opportunities for turnovers and potentially could cash in some of those opportunities as well. So for that reason, give us Washington outright. We said it the first time these two teams played, the series will probably be a split. So Washington, again, probably gets the revenge here. On the spread, however, Washington at -3.5, and I don't think, again, the game gets decided by more than a field goal. I don't see Washington blowing out the Giants, so I actually really like New York on the spread. Next up, we've got the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both teams 1-6 coming off the bye week divisional clash. Now, for Houston, they were the center of a lot of trade speculation, getting close to the trade deadline, potentially moving some wide receivers. Ultimately, that doesn't happen. So Deshaun Watson will have his guys available to him. And that's probably going to be a welcomed sign, because this Jacksonville Jaguars defense can absolutely be exposed. They've been at the center of some big-time scoring performances from their opponents, and the Texans should probably be the next ones in line. And honestly, the Houston Texans defense might also have something to say about a decent performance here, because this will be the first game that Gardner Minshew won't be under center. So insert rookie Jake Luton for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm not really all that sure what to expect. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of James Robinson and a lot of DJ Shark. Yes, James Robinson should probably still have some success, but I just don't see the Jaguars having the necessary offensive firepower and the experience at the quarterback position to come back if the Texans go up quickly on them, because this is a great matchup for everyone on Houston, for Deshaun Watson, for the wide receivers, and even for David Johnson, who's kind of struggled this year. This is a great chance for him to have a big time game versus the Jaguars, and I think it's going to go exactly that way. There's honestly nobody that scares me defensively for Jacksonville. Offensively, other than James Robinson, I don't really have anything to worry about, because I don't know what we're going to see from the wide receivers due to the question marks we have at the quarterback position and really the lack of film we have from Luton. So for that reason, I will take the Houston Texans. Give me the sure thing. I think this will be a high-scoring affair. I would take a chance on the over as well. But at the end of the day, the Houston Texans are the better team in my opinion. They are the more skilled team with the better skilled position players. I will take them outright. The spread +6.5. I think it could be higher. So for that reason, give me the Texans on the spread too. Moving on, we have got the Las Vegas Raiders at the LA Chargers. Divisional clash here. The Raiders 4-3 coming off a gritty win over the Browns, while the Chargers 2-5 inexplicably keep finding ways to lose heartbreaking matchups, because they had that game in the bag versus the Broncos behind a great performance yet again from Justin Herbert and those offensive playmakers. But I don't know what it is at this point in time. Is it just a defense being inconsistent? Is it coaching? Is it the offense and their inability to put teams away? Either way, one of these things keeps coming up, and the Chargers just can't close games. And honestly, I think it's a real issue, and we might see it again here versus the Raiders. I think the Chargers have the better offensive weapons. Don't get me wrong. Justin Herbert has been playing very well, and this is another decent matchup for him. Justin Jackson has been doing very well, filling in for Austin Eckler, and you've still got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry. Definitely more to work with than what the Raiders have, because for them, at wide receiver, it's a crapshoot. It's pretty much Darren Waller and then Josh Jacobs, unless he gets game scripted out. But I think this is a better matchup for the Raiders. I think that, Josh Jacobs will be more involved. We saw Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay have some success versus the Chargers last week. And Derek Carr, again, I don't have ultimate confidence in him either, but I think he's going to be the guy that in a contest where it's the hardest one for me to predict this week. It's a coin flip, in our opinion, that even the smallest mistake could be a big difference. That we're going to go with the more efficient, with the more trusted quarterback in Derek Carr. So give us the Raiders to actually pull off the upset here. The spread -1.5. So again, the Chargers might be favored, but it's by barely a little bit. It could go either way. So right now, we're going to give the slight edge to the team that seems to be able to put more complete games together more consistently. Give us the Raiders here. Next up, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Dallas Cowboys. And let's not spend too much time on this one because it's probably pretty obvious who you should pick. The Steelers, 7-0, the only undefeated team in the NFL. They get to face the Dallas Cowboys, who are 2-6. They've got a revolving door at quarterback. They just got embarrassed by the Eagles in a game where Carson Wentz tried to give away that football game multiple times. Ezekiel Elliott banged up. That defense is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Do we need to keep going? This is just a horrible matchup on paper. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense, the best defense in the NFL, regardless of who the Cowboys play at quarterback. This is going to be a tough one. And offensively for the Steelers, don't be surprised if you see the starters being sat in the third or fourth quarter. We think that's how big of a blowout this one will be. The game plan should be simple. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have to do all that much. Just use James Conner over and over, and that Pittsburgh Steelers defense will do the rest. Honestly, we probably see at least one touchdown from the Pittsburgh Steelers defense alone, and that might be a little bit of an undersell. It could be more than one. I think this is a completely one-sided affair. Give me the Pittsburgh Steelers in every which way possible. I love them outright. The spread +10.5. That should be a bigger number. I will take them on the spread as well. Next, we have got the Miami Dolphins at the Arizona Cardinals. The Miami Dolphins, 4-3, shockingly getting a very comfortable win over the Rams last week, but it wasn't due to a stellar play from Tua. Instead, it was owed to their underrated defense, which absolutely killed Jared Goff and the Rams. And now Miami faces the Cardinals, who are 5-2, coming off the bye week. And they are stacked offensively with a red-hot Kyler Murray, who has also been a force on the ground. Now, both teams will be without their starting running backs, Gaskin for the Dolphins and Drake for the Arizona Cardinals. But we actually think this is a benefit for the Cardinals, as Chase Edmonds is the much more well-rounded running back up until this point, especially in terms of his usage as a pass catcher. So for us, that only adds another dimension offensively for the Cardinals. And on the flip side, if the Dolphins want to keep pace with the Cardinals, this is going to be a game where Tua has to air it out. You know, he didn't really have to do all that much last week just because the Dolphins jumped out to an early lead and they could ride that defense. But the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray, we think that'll present a different type of problem for them. They're going to have to account for the rushing ability of Kyler Murray. But look, favorably, Miami, this is going to be an easier matchup versus this Arizona defense compared to last week and the LA Rams defense. So we do expect a bit of a higher scoring game here potentially, and for Tua to get more involved. Now, at the end of the day, we will still take the Arizona Cardinals. We think that they have the more experienced quarterback, and we think that the Dolphins, as good as they were last week, are going to struggle stopping the dual threat play from Kyler Murray. And again, Chase Edmonds for us is an advantage to the Arizona Cardinals at that running back position. On the spread, however, again, we're actually going to give some credit here to the Miami Dolphins. They've got that underrated defense, and this is a good matchup here for Tua versus this Cardinals defense. We actually think the Dolphins keep this one close. The spread at -4.5. We'll take the Dolphins there, but the Cardinals outright. Looking at Sunday night, we have got the New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Classic divisional clash. We get to see Tom Brady versus Drew Brees round 2. The Saints 5-2 coming off that overtime win versus the Bears, while the Bucs 6-2 sweating out a victory over the Giants. And we said it in week 1 when the Saints won this contest. This series will be a split with the home team getting the victory each time around. And guess who's hosting this time? It is the Tampa Bay Bucs. And there's a lot of big storylines here to follow. It's going to make for a great contest offensively. The Saints are expected to finally get Michael Thomas back, also Emmanuel Sanders as well, which will add a much needed passing boost to their offense. But for the Bucs, this will be the piece of news that everybody will be keeping an eye out for. It is the Antonio Brown season debut after he was signed a couple of weeks ago from Tampa Bay, and his reunion with Tom Brady. That's going to generate a lot of intrigue here. Chris Godwin also, he had that fractured finger but is expected to play. It's going to be absolutely mind-boggling to see how opposing defenses line up versus the trio of Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown, and especially versus the Saints secondary, which has kind of been struggling this season a little up and down. We think that this game could go more than likely in favor of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like we said before, offensively, we have got a little bit more faith in them in terms of the addition of Antonio Brown. And now, also, when you look at the defensive side of the football, we said the Saints have been a little bit inconsistent. But the Bucs, man, that has been one of their strong points defensively, and especially stopping the rush. So Alvin Kamara might have a little bit of a tough go at it. And with Michael Thomas returning, don't be surprised to see the Saints maybe try and force feed him some targets, which could potentially take away some opportunities from their best offensive player in Alvin Kamara, who we mentioned. Drew Brees was also a little bit nicked up throughout the week, but he will play, so maybe he's at less than 100%. Either way, we are taking the Tampa Bay Bucs here. We think that offensively, they are more balanced. Defensively, they're better outright. So we're going to take Tampa Bay on the money line. On the spread at -4.5, the Bucs are favored. But either way this goes, we think this will be a close game. And we actually really like the Saints on the spread. We think both these teams will be contenders when we continue a couple of weeks and enter the playoffs. And both teams will put their best foot forward here in a game that should probably be pretty close entering the fourth quarter, with both teams having a chance to win. And finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we've got the New England Patriots at the New York Jets. The Patriots, 2-5. Almost shocking to say that when considering we're talking about a Bill Belichick-led team. But there's been so many offensive struggles. But hey, silver lining, they aren't as bad as their opponent in the New York Jets, who are 0-8. Still the only winless team in the NFL. There were some question marks whether Sam Darnold would play or not. The expectation is he will be available. But honestly, we say it every week in regards to the Jets, it probably doesn't matter who plays quarterback. This is just a game where they're outmatched. And that's a lot considering that the New England Patriots have struggled so much offensively. But if there was ever a game for your team to trick people into thinking you figured it out, it would be versus the Jets. This is the perfect, bounce back game for the New England Patriots. I expect a good performance from their defense and then just heavy rush orientation from the offense, whether it's Cam Newton, whether it's Damian Harris, whatever the situation might be. And honestly, Cam Newton will probably have success here through the year as well versus the defense. Yes, Julian Edelman isn't available, but there's going to be opportunities for regardless who lines up at wide receiver. So give us the Patriots here. Maybe it starts off a little bit slow, but we think the Patriots have enough talent, as much as they've struggled in that department offensively and even defensively, to kind of pull away late. So for that reason, they probably beat up here on the Jets. Give us the Patriots to win outright. The spread +7.5 for the Jets. We don't think that's high enough. Give us New England there as well. So with that, we wrap up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, let's start with the Carolina Panthers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Plain and simple, give us the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs, one of the best teams in the NFL. We don't see the Panthers, even with Christian McCaffrey potentially returning, keeping pace with this offense and this underrated defense. Then Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, which has been absolutely atrocious all year long, facing Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller, Brendan Cooks, and David Johnson, and no Gardner Minshew in this game. Houston Texans for us. Then Pittsburgh Steelers at the Dallas Cowboys, the biggest no-brainer potentially of the year. Give us the Steelers here behind a great rushing performance and a great defense, regardless of who plays quarterback for the Cowboys. And then finally, New England Patriots at the Jets. The Jets might honestly not win a single game this year. The Patriots, this is a game where they could get back to their winning ways. We think it'll be a strong performance from the defense and from the rushing attack. So give us the Patriots there. So with that, we wrap up our Week 9 NFL game picks, outright versus spread, along with our locks of the week. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section, along with any other questions you guys might have. And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and also give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us. And if you guys want early access to these picks, then again, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin, where we share our thoughts on these games as the week progresses. And even easier than that is go sign up for our free newsletter at alldaypigskin.com, where if you do so, you will get early access to these picks from our newsletter. All the details in the description. But for now, we'll see you guys in future videos.